Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Mamikonian. I'm the Director of Academic Affairs here at the National Association for Armenian Studies and Research. And I wish you happy spring, Nowruz Mubarak, and all other felicitations of the day. We're grateful to you for making time in your schedule to be here or be with us online. Following the talk, we welcome your questions, both those of you here in person and those of you on Zoom who will need to use the Zoom Q&A function. And once that concludes, we'll have a reception and we invite you to stay and enjoy some refreshments. Allow me to mention a couple of upcoming events. On this Saturday, March 22nd at 12 p.m. Eastern, will be the next program in the series Literary Lights, which is organized by the International Armenian Literary Alliance, NAASR, and the Krikor and Clara Zorab Information Center in New York. And this will be the second of two panels featuring contributors to the special Armenian issue of the magazine Wazafiri. Some excellent writers. I urge you to check it out. On Tuesday, March 25th, we're pleased to co-sponsor a talk organized and hosted by the Takayan Cultural Association Boston with our friend and colleague, Dr. Sergio Laporta, entitled When Things Fall Apart, Disentangling Christian-Muslim Relations in Medieval Armenia. This will be at the Baikar Center in Watertown, an in-person only event. Please attend in person if you can, because you can't attend online. Also in person, Professor Laporta will be speaking on Thursday, March 27th at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C., where he will give the annual Grace and Paul Shahenian Armenian Christian Art and Culture Lecture, which we're pleased to co-sponsor. This is an in-person event. In April, we'll be involved in two events in connection with the publication of NAASR board member and outstanding novelist Nancy Gregorian's new book titled The Burning Heart of the World. On Monday, April 7th, she will be in conversation with Professor Marianne Hirsch in person at Columbia University. And on Tuesday, April 15th, again, as part of the Literary Lights series, we will host in this very room a hybrid event with Nancy in conversation with Nanor Barsumian. This will also be on Zoom and YouTube. But if you can come in person, gosh, we'd love to see you. And on Thursday, April 24th at 7:30 p.m., here in this room, in commemoration of the 110th anniversary of the Armenian Genocide, we will present a hybrid talk by Professor Elise Semerjian of Clark University, April 24, The Origins of Armenian Genocide Commemoration Day. And prior to the talk, there will be a musical prelude by our friend, pianist Tanya Bartevyan. Tanya, we're looking forward to it. Thank you. There are, of course, other events coming up, but rather than my spending the entire evening listing them, please get on our email list or follow NAASR on social media or both. Tonight, or more accurately tomorrow, we will raffle off a copy of this book, which seemed thematically appropriate to the evening, Two Chronicles on the History of Karabakh, translated by Professor George Bernutian, which presents two important historical sources on Artsakh in the early modern period, an important publication that was supported by a grant from NAASR, by the way. If you're already a NAASR member and are here in person, we just need you to sign in and provide us with your contact information. And if you're a NAASR member attending on Zoom, we already have your contact information and we'll let you know if you are a lucky winner. And if you're not a NAASR member, I believe you can finish the sentence, please become a NAASR member and you will be eligible. I offer a reminder that the work we do at NAASR is made possible by the support of our members and donors, for which we thank you. The very same can be said of the co-sponsors of tonight's talk, the Mashdot's Chair in Armenian Studies at Harvard, the Society for Armenian Studies, and the Armenian Museum of America. Please join these groups, support these groups. They all depend on you they all depend on you for your support and your interest in the work that they do. It makes all the difference in the world. I'd like to thank personally Christina Moranti, the Mashdot's chairholder, Barlo Dermogadichian, president of the Society for Armenian Studies, and Jason Sohigian, executive director of the Armenian Museum of America, for their interest in and collaboration on tonight's program. And with that, I would like to invite my colleague, Jason Sohikian, to come up and offer some remarks. Jason.
Thank you, Mark. It's great to be here, and we'd like to thank everyone for their involvement and participation for this very important topic. I'd also like to recognize in the audience someone that's new to our team at the Armenian Museum of America. Caprice Erickson is our collections manager who's joined us recently from the Holocaust Museum in Houston. So we're very glad to have her on board. And hopefully everyone will have a chance to meet her and over the years connect with her at the museum. We're really all about collaboration at the museum, so we're grateful to NAASR and the partners in this program. One of the things we've done last fall, we hosted together with NAASR and the Genocide Education Project, an incredible workshop with teachers from all across the country who came to our galleries and spaces to learn about the genocide and how to teach the genocide in their classroom. ALMA has a long history of collaboration with the History Museum of Armenia, going back to when our founder, Nzhdeh Yeranyan, was cooperating with them to publish a catalog together of our collections. And the speaker tonight and I were talking about this back in our galleries. It was one of the first publications that they released after independence in the 90s. So we're really proud of programs like that. When the war restarted in 2020, it really made us reflect on the importance of our missions in our organizations, especially at the museum, to tell the story of the Armenians and preserve and share the artifacts about our history and our culture. We express our concern for the people that were affected by the war and continue to be affected, the erasure of our history and the importance of teaching and remembering, and also the importance of these museum collections that were endangered and lost as a result of the war. At the museum, we do have a few ways that we talk about the Artsakh conflict in our galleries. One of them is the NFL cleats that were designed for Artsakh and auctioned off for humanitarian relief. And those objects were donated by Michelle Collegian and Bob Gregorian, and they're now part of our textiles collection at the museum. But it's a way to use an artifact to tell a story about what's happening now to the Armenians. We've always had a high level of concern for the prisoners of war that are still being held by Azerbaijan. So we have tried to tell the story in our galleries as a museum. And one of the ways we've done it as well is with a collaboration with the History Museum, and the speaker tonight, Nzhdeh, was a great partner in an online exhibition called The Treasures of Artsakh, which was organized by our scholar, Dr. Elisa Dumikian, and it's still posted on our website. I would encourage you to look for it under the virtual exhibitions. But that was a really massive collaboration with 16 Armenian museums around the world who contributed items in their collection from Artsakh. So it was really an unprecedented collaboration that Elisa and Nzhdeh were able to put together, and it really documented the history of the Armenians of Artsakh going back to ancient times. So I really encourage you to look up the Treasures of Artsakh on our site. And the war has also made us reflect on the importance of museum collections even around the world, and just the importance of having our resources and historical artifacts dispersed in collections in other countries as a way of protecting them. I just wanted to make a comment on the importance of having artifacts in other collections outside of Armenia, in the diaspora, in Europe, everywhere, where we can share them with the public, but also protect them for future generations to know the history of the Armenians. So with that, I'd like to turn it back to Mark.
Thank you, Jason. And in my zeal to thank people earlier, I neglected to thank the Kaluskal-Benkian Foundation as this program is presented under the auspices of the NAASR Kaluskal-Benkian lecture series on contemporary Armenian issues. And it is indeed, as Jason made very clear, a very relevant and important and burning contemporary issue that we're going to hear about tonight. So let me introduce our speaker. Dr. Nzhdeh Yeranyan is a cultural anthropologist specializing in the preservation and management of cultural heritage, particularly in crisis, conflict, and post-conflict situations. His research focuses on the colonial and post-colonial archaeology of Armenia, the Bronze Age landscape, and the preservation of the cultural heritage of Nagorno-Karabakh, Artsakh, including the protection of museums and collections. He is the Deputy Scientific Director of the History Museum of Armenia in Yerevan. He's a lecturer in the Department of Cultural Studies at Yerevan State University and is at this time currently a Fulbright visiting scholar at Cornell University in New York. A couple of years ago, NAASR was able to provide a research grant to Dr. Yeranyan to help him carry out some of his valuable work, which I hope we will hear about in detail in a future talk. And last summer, he graciously welcomed my wife and me when we visited the History Museum in Yerevan. So it is a very special pleasure, personally and professionally, to welcome him here tonight. Nzhdeh. It's all yours.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I would like to begin by expressing my deep gratitude to all the organizing institutions for making this event possible. It is truly an honor to be here, and especially I want to extend my warm thanks to Mark Mamikonian and Jason Sohigyan, who was been in close contact with me throughout the process and has been incredibly supportive. And of course, thank you all for being here today. Today, I will talk about the damage suffered by museums as a result of the Karabakh-Artsakh war, which has been the focus of my and my colleagues' research in last years. In some publications and articles have in this topic, and this year we are going to publish the book about Artsakh museums by support of AGBU, and the book which will about Artsakh museums is about the establishment of museums of Artsakh, and of course about the cultural loss of these museums. So cultural heritage is one of the most damaged realm in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, which has lasted for more than 30 years. The damage caused by the conflict is sometimes not only physical, but also intangible, destroying memories, connections to place, and sense of belonging. Museums have suffered significant damage since the First Karabakh War. However, they became even more vulnerable after the 44-day war in 2020 and the forced displacement of Armenians in September 2023. The large-scale war launched by Azerbaijan against the Armenians of Artsakh targeted not only the civilian population, but also the tangible and intangible cultural heritage, as well as cultural and educational institutions within the Artsakh. While researchers have paid some attention to Artsakh immovable heritage, such as churches and cemeteries, the landscape of region's museum and their fate following the events of 2020 and 2023 are less widely known, yet also urgent matters of concern. I'm sure that everyone here is familiar with the conflict and its history. However, since we also have online participants and this discussion is being recorded, let me briefly talk about the background of the conflict before moving on the main topic. Karabakh is the region in the South Caucasus located between the modern republics of Armenia and Azerbaijan. The geographical conditions of this territory have contributed to its continuous inhabitation and cultural development over millennia. During the Middle Ages, this region was part of various state entities, sometimes even being semi-independent. A new status was established following the Russia-Persian War, when, due to its defeat in the war, Persia officially ceded Karabakh to the Russian Empire through the Treaty of Gulistan. After the establishment of Soviet rule, when the borders of member countries were being drawn, this disputed territory between Azerbaijan and Armenia was annexed to Azerbaijan in 1921 through Stalin's mediation, granting in broad regional autonomy. In making this decision, the fact that the majority of the population was Armenian was not taken into account. As a result, the Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Oblast was created within Azerbaijan. During the last years of the Soviet Union, Gorbachev's announced restructuring or perestroika program allowed the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh to express their self-determination aspirations. In 1988, the Council of Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Oblast voted to separate from the Azerbaijan SSR and join to Armenian SSR. However, the restructuring policy had unexpected consequences. It weakened the central authorities' control over the region. When the Soviet Union collapsed and the conflict escalated, Moscow no longer had sufficient influence to control the situation. Gorbachev's policy also contributed to the rise of nationalist sentiments in both Armenia and Azerbaijan, which in turn complicated the possibilities of a peaceful resolution of the conflict. The armed confrontations lasting more than 4 years ended with a ceasefire signed on May 12, 1994. But before that, on September 2, 1991, the Nagorno-Karabakh Republic was declared by the local Armenians in the territory of the former Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Oblast, and it was joined by parts of the 7 former Soviet Azerbaijani districts occupied by local Armenians during the war. However, the Nagorno-Karabakh Republic was not internationally recognized by anyone. In this historically Armenian-populated region, Armenians lived until September 2023, when, during the 44-day war in 2020, parts of the southern and central regions of Nagorno-Karabakh Republic were partially occupied by Azerbaijanis. In September 2023, after keeping the area under blockade for more than a year, armed confrontations resumed and the local Armenian population was forced to leave the region by Azerbaijani armed forces. As a result, Nagorno-Karabakh completely came under Azerbaijani control. The museum sector in Artsakh was built on foundations laid down in the Soviet period. In brief, the first museums in the Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Oblast, or NKAO, as it was then called, were established during the Soviet years. The first was the Stepanakert Museum of History and Local Lore. Established in 1939, as was the case across the Soviet Union, museums in NKAO became more active after the Second World War, with new branches opening in regions outside of urban centers. They were often dedicated to war heroes. There were classic Soviet-style museums of history and local lore. They presented the region's nature, geology, archaeology, and history of the Soviet period. Of course, national culture was not mentioned all in these exhibitions. Talking about national issues, especially in such a politically sensitive area as Artsakh, was completely forbidden. To give you an idea how closed and controlled the system was, let me tell you a story told by the sculptor Robert Askarian, who created the Dur sculpture for the Stepanakert Museum. He recalled, according to the rules in Soviet times, all sculpture designs had to be approved by an art council in Baku. Since the council often rejected proposals on the grounds that they looked too Armenian, I ended up bribing one of the commission members sent from Baku to avoid having to send the sketch there. But even after it was installed, I was called to Shushi by the local party leadership and told that the Armenian inscription had to be replaced with Russian and Azerbaijani, otherwise they wouldn't allow the dur to remain. The Karabakh movement began soon after, and everything stayed in place. But this story perfectly illustrates how museum exhibitions and cultural life in general were organized in Artsakh during those years. It was only after the collapse of Soviet Union that changes began to take place in the museums. In many cases, the old exhibitions remained, and only new sections of the events of the 1990s were added. At the time of the First Nagorno-Karabakh War, the tools and knowledge necessary for effective preservation and documentation of museum collections were underdeveloped. Both sides lacked the expertise to properly safeguard or inventory museum assets. Many museums, both inside and outside the Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Oblast, suffered from incomplete or poorly maintained inventories. This made it impossible to assess the extent of damage to their collections. Among the damaged museums are the local lore museums in Stepanakert, Martakert, Hadrut, Shushi, Agdam, and Lachin regions, cities. In addition, smaller museums and villages of the oblast and the surrounding areas were also affected. As a result, the extent of the destruction remained unclear after the war. However, it is known that the damage included both partial and total destruction of buildings, as well as significant losses of cultural objects and museum collections, either during the conflict or in its aftermath. Museum life in Artsakh became active after 1994 ceasefire. Museums on the territory of the unrecognized Republic of Artsakh were gradually restored, and new museums were opened in the 2000s. There were significant challenges for the museum sector. The lack of political recognition of the Republic of Artsakh, the ongoing conflict and related security concerns, isolation from international cooperation, and barriers to participation in global organizations pose significant challenges to the preservation and global presentation of Artsakh's cultural heritage. These circumstances often relegated cultural preservation efforts to secondary status compared to security and defense priorities. Nevertheless, the museum sector expanded, revitalizing cultural life in the region. Before the 44-day war, about 40 state and private museums and collections operated in Artsakh. Annual events such as the International Day of Museums, Night of Museums, European Heritage Days, various festivals and cultural events were organized to further increase cultural engagement and appreciation. Museums in Artsakh played multifaceted roles as not only representatives of cultural heritage, but also as vital centers for education and research. Museums in Artsakh organized a variety of educational programs tailored to the interests and needs of their audience. These programs included thematic lectures and screenings of educational films, providing visitors with interactive and informative experience. Museums became focal points for fostering curiosity and learning among school children, reflecting the community's strong interest in exploring and understanding their cultural heritage. The involvement of school children in museum activities not only enriched their understanding of cultural heritage, but also contributed to their overall educational development. Moreover, the role of museums as research centers further enriched the educational landscape. Through scholarly endeavors and research initiatives, museums contributed to the generation of new knowledge and insights into the region's culture and history. Researchers found valuable resources and opportunities for study within museum collections, fostering a culture of intellectual inquiry and academic exchange. Until 2020, the state launched numerous initiatives to enhance the cultural landscape of Artsakh. Notably, within the Museum Development Program, efforts were made to facilitate the participation of museum personnel from the Ministry of Training courses and seminars held for museum staff in the Republic of Armenia. Significant strides were taken in the advancement of museums and libraries, including the acquisition of new exhibits, the augmentation of museum and library collections, the enhancement of service quality, and the improvement of infrastructure and logistical support. Particularly noteworthy was the establishment of new museums that had not existed in the Soviet era, such as those in Tigranakert, Kashatagh, Shushi, and among others. Moreover, the Historical Environment Preservation Service of the Republic of Artsakh became an institutional member of International Council of Museums, which was made possible thanks to Armenia's support. This, however, doesn't mean that the museum field in Artsakh was fully free from isolation. Despite the challenges, museum professionals continued to work in accordance with international regulations. These efforts highlighted the stability and development opportunities in the management of cultural heritage in Artsakh during the relatively peaceful years from 1994 to 2020. Despite being isolated due to its unrecognized status, museum professionals and stakeholders in Artsakh followed international regulations and worked to develop and preserve the region's cultural heritage. While limited opportunities for engagement with the global museum community affected some aspects of growth, the work done by Artsakh's cultural heritage professionals still made a difference during this time. Museums were among the hardest hit sectors in the cultural landscape of Artsakh due to the 44-day war. The first reports of partial or complete damage to museums and collections emerged during the conflict. During the war, the archaeological site of Tigranakert, located a few hundred meters from the Tigranakert Museum, was bombed. The building of the Martakert Museum of Local History was damaged, and Azerbaijani soldiers looted the artifacts from Azov Cave, which were temporarily stored in the village school for the purpose of establishing a museum in the village. After the war, assessing wartime damage to museums became possible through media surveillance and satellite imagery analysis. After the war, 12 museums and collections came under Azerbaijani control. Among them were the Hadrut Local Lore Museum, the Togh Meylik Palace Reserve Museum, the Tigranakert Archaeological Museum, the Shushi City Museums, including the History Museum, the Art Museum, the Geology Museum, the Armenian Currency Museum, the Carpet Private Museum, and several other private collections. In August 2021, Caucasus Heritage Watch released satellite imagery that showed major changes to the park of sculptures at the State Museum of Fine Arts in Shushi. Reportedly, 51 artworks previously on display in the park had vanished, and the entire area was completely cleared. The fate of these sculptures remains uncertain. This park was the initiative of Professor Grigori Gabrielians and the renowned sculptor Vigen Avetis. It showcased works created during 5 international symposia named after Jacob Gurjan and a sculpture from Shushi between 2011 and 2017. A total of 62 figures crafted by 37 artists from various countries, including Italy, Belgium, Egypt, Russia, India, China, United States, and so on. These sculptures conceived in Artsakh were gifted to the people of Artsakh. The current condition and whereabouts of the museum's collection, comprising valuable artistic and cultural pieces, remain undisclosed. Another video shared by Azerbaijani user on social media shows the Geological Museum of Shushi depicting Azerbaijani soldiers causing damage to exhibits and museum artifacts. Additionally, the museum's roof appears to be destroyed, with debris covering the displays and valuable items preserved within. The damage was also reported in the Caucasus Heritage Watch September 2021 report. Established in 2014, the Shushi Geological Museum showcased a remarkable collection of geological specimens, including ores and minerals. The museum boasted a diverse collection of 400 samples within the oldest dating back 1.2 billion years, sourced from Artsakh itself and 48 countries. Most of these artifacts originated from the personal collection of geologist Grigori Gabrielians, after whom the museum was named. During the 44-day war, museum staff relocated the collection as shelter in an effort to protect it, but the shelter subsequently fell under the control of Azerbaijani forces, raising questions about the current disposition of the museum's invaluable collections. Azerbaijani forces destroyed the Hadrut Museum of Local Lore in connection with military exercises following 2020 ceasefire. Although only damaged by shelling during the war, a video distributed by the Azerbaijani armed forces after the war shows the building being used as a target during military exercises and finally being blown up. Beyond the physical integrity of museums, another critical issue is the fate of their collections. In some cases, collections were relocated to the museum shelters, but the majority were kept in the exhibition halls. On the initiative of Artsakh Ministry of Education, Science and Sports, the exhibits of some museums were evacuated and moved to a safe place during the war. Some museums and collections, mostly private collections, were evacuated on private initiative. The Shushi Carpet Museum can be considered one of the best examples of an individual initiative to save a museum collections. The collection consists of 2 parts. The founding private collection included old carpets of famous Armenian carpet weavers from different villages of Armenia and Artsakh. The second part consists of old Armenian carpets that the founder bought from around the world. This museum was a special educational, cultural, and research center. Due to the war, the founder moved more than 100 displayed exhibits to Yerevan, leaving more than 200 carpets and other ethnographic items in the museum building. As will be known to this audience, in December 2022, Azerbaijanis, under the guise of eco-activists, closed the Lachin Corridor, the only road connecting Armenia to Artsakh. After keeping the road closed for about 10 months and pushing Artsakh into a humanitarian crisis, in September, the Azerbaijani army attacked the settlements of Artsakh, forcing the final capitulation of the unrecognized state and the mass exodus of its Armenian inhabitants. The staff of regional museums were unable to evacuate the exhibits that had already been placed in boxes due to the lack of gasoline. These events of September 2023 further threatened the cultural institutions of Artsakh as 40 more museums came under Azerbaijani control. The fate of these museums and their collections remains largely unknown. Interestingly, some people, despite limited time to prepare and space in their cars, took with them fragments of their family heritage. Carpets, paintings, earrings, left over from their grandmother. Of course, this is a small fraction of a huge cultural assemblage, but it shows how people, even in times of crisis, prioritize their cultural heritage and the memories and identities attached to them. Although the former Artsakh authorities report that various private initiatives managed to evacuate and save a small portion of museum collections, this work was neither widespread nor systematic. Today, the status of most museum collections remains unclear, and international regulations such as the Hague 1954 Convention for the Protection of Cultural Property in the event of armed conflict are not equipped to respond to this situation and ensure the protection of collections and their accessibility to the people who have been physically separated from them. The central theme of these conventions is the condemnation of targeting or internationally destroying cultural heritage, recognized as an affront to all heritage and condemned by the global community. However, a significant limitation of these agreements is their exclusive applicability to internationally recognized states. Despite the existence of numerous international laws, conventions, and established practices aimed at safeguarding cultural property in conflict zones, cultural heritage remains profoundly vulnerable. Heritage represents the culmination of values forged through the formation of cultural identity, embodying a community's sense of belonging and attachment to its land. The case of Artsakh is more complicated. On the one hand, Azerbaijan, despite various resolutions from the Council of Europe, instructions from the World Court, the United Nations, and the advice of some European governments, continues to deliberately damage cultural heritage. The lack of international recognition of Artsakh independence, which once limited the application of international conventions in this area, further complicated this situation during the conflict. To summarize and conclude, the main problems that Artsakh's museums have faced in the last 4 years are the following: condition of museum buildings, both during and after the war, deliberate targeting and bombing of museum buildings, condition of the collections. Even in cases where we have standing museums, the status of their collections is unclear. Where they are, in what conditions they are kept, whether they were looted, sold, or stored somewhere is unknown. Status of evacuated collections. Through some initiatives, the former Artsakh authorities managed to evacuate a small part of the museum collections. However, their status is unknown and therefore vulnerable. And from here arise the next, no less important problems. What are the appropriate locations for such artifacts and the principles for their display? How to develop effective methods to presenting them to the public? How can the connection between the people of Artsakh and museum collections be ensured? These museums occupied an important place in the life of that community. Therefore, they must play an important role in the integration of the newly refugee community of Artsakh and overcoming the crisis. These are the questions that need the attention of both the scientific community and political figures, and especially international actors. One of the most effective ways to protect cultural heritage in times of conflict is through digitization. After the 44-day war, we launched a project aimed at creating a comprehensive database of archaeological materials from Artsakh with the support of Center of Research on the Christian East, Salzburg University, National Association of Armenian Studies and Research, and the Carlos Gulbenkian Foundation. This initiative allowed us to document artifacts from various museum collections in Artsakh and beyond, including materials housed in Armenia, Russia, Austria, and Germany. Today, these collections are being actively studied and gradually made accessible to the public through research and dissemination efforts. I have always believed that science should remain separate from politics, and I have never made any political statements. I also believe that during all the Karabakh wars, many cultural sites were damaged on both sides. Whoever committed such acts, they are unambiguously condemnable. Sometimes the destruction was deliberate, sometimes it was accidental, and sometimes it was the result of selective protection mechanisms. However, what has been happening in and around Artsakh for nearly 5 years is a case of classical genocide. The International Association of Genocide Scholars addressed this in a resolution on Nagorno-Karabakh, highlighting Azerbaijan's policy of destroying Armenian heritage. The resolution recognized the destruction of Armenian cultural heritage and characterizes the forced displacement of ethnic Armenians in September and October 2023 through siege and bombing as ethnic cleansing and crime against humanity. In the 9th point, the resolution urges Azerbaijan to respect, protect, and prevent the destruction of Armenian cultural values in Nagorno-Karabakh. These people are treated this way because they are Armenian. This heritage is being destroyed because it is Armenian. In this connection, I would also like to remember all the prisoners of war who are facing unfair trials in Azerbaijan simply because they are Armenians. I express my solidarity with them. I don't know what such a statement can achieve in today's world, where even basic rights are often ignored in many regions, but I still hope that they will return to Armenia safe and alive. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Nzhdeh. And again, a reminder to people online, you can use the Zoom Q&A to ask questions, which people are starting to do. And people in the room, please, I invite you and urge you to come up to the microphone and speak your questions so that they can be heard by us and by people online. And I appreciate your wanting not to make political statements. So but nonetheless, I have to start with a difficult question that verges on politics, which you can answer in a non-political way as you're able to. Does the recent peace agreement, in finger quotes, if you like, render more or less difficult the process of trying to come to terms with the material loss from these museums, or even to create a listing of the losses? Is this going to be easier, harder, or just the same?
Thank you very much. Thank you for this important question. You know, most points of this ceasefire, I don't know how shall we call it ceasefire or peace agreement or no, but anyway, in this document, most points of this document are still unknown for public. Anyway, as much as we now know, there isn't any point which discusses this kind of problems, this kind of humanity problems. But unfortunately, as much as I know from public news and other discussions, there isn't any point in these 60 points which suggested by Armenia, but by Armenian government. There are the points which mandatory suggested by Azerbaijan. And of course, I don't believe that there can be some point discussing this kind of problems. And I also, I don't know to use this word or no, but I'm afraid that in future that can be arise that kind of problems by Azerbaijani side. Suggesting or to give back the museum collections which were evacuated by previous authorities of Artsakh Republic from different museums of Artsakh. At this point, we don't know any point which included in this peace agreement about which will somewhere discuss cultural heritage or humanity problems.
Sorry, can you spell out a little bit more clearly the problem of the potential problem of Azerbaijan wanting to, I guess you would say, repatriate this material to Azerbaijan? On what basis would they be doing that?
Yes, thank you again for this. Is very, very sensitive and important question. You know, there are some international regulations, such as the Hague Convention, which discuss the situation of cultural heritage, especially museum collections, during the war situation. According to these regulations, which I believe, and you know, we discussed this question also with our colleagues in different institutions from different countries, that there is a big problem of these resolutions, because these conventions and other international regulations wrote after the Second World War. But the situation of modern problems nowadays is totally different. According to these resolutions, after the peace, when governments evacuated some museum collections, after the peace, they must return them to the original country. In this case, I don't know, shall we call it the peace or no? I don't know if the Armenians, if the community will live there, if the community who belongs to these all collections, all these memories and materials, if they don't live, they can't be safe and they can't return to their homeland. Shall we call this situation peace or no? And I don't know what will be the decision of Armenian government.
Thank you. Question from online and from one of our online viewers, Steve and Sim, who I know is on the other side of the ocean, so it's very late there. The emerging narrative by Azerbaijan appears to be that it has sole control over everything within its territory, has an inalienable right to do whatever it wants to do within its territory, and that anyone who says otherwise is displaying, quote, neo-colonialism, unquote. Okay. This neo-colonialism terminology has already been taken up by Turkey in partnership with the EU to suppress, dismiss, and exclude commentary and criticism concerning Turkey's treatment of Armenian sites. Do you have any advice on opposing this spreading ideology as a museum professional and as a scholar?
Sorry, I'm not sure that I understand what is the question.
That Azerbaijan, let me try to boil it down. Azerbaijan claims it has the right to control and do what it wishes with everything within its borders, and anyone who says otherwise is engaging in neo-colonialism.
Thank you. You know, this is the problem which I speak a few minutes ago. These resolutions were wrote 70 years ago when the situation in the world were totally different. I don't know how they will manage the Armenian manuscripts if, for example, Martin Adaran would decide to keep it in the museums. I don't know how they would decide to manage this heritage if they every day showing how much they hate the heritage, what in some way connected with Armenian or Armenians. No, I'm not agree with that. This is not political. This is not political question. This is just my scientific opinion that the heritage mostly belongs to the community. If the community anymore doesn't live there, who belongs to this heritage? I'm not agree with that.
I imagine, if I'm trying to put myself in their shoes, that some of this material, as some of the physical sites that are not yet destroyed, would be repurposed, rebranded as part of the Caucasian Albanian, quote unquote. I can't make finger quotes because my hands are full, but I hope you hear them in my voice. The Caucasian Albanian cultural heritage of Azerbaijan. Yes.
Yes, as they are doing almost every day, and just after some months after some months of ceasefire in 2020, in Shushi opened a museum of carpet. Where this collection bring from, where this collection collected, I don't know. Most probably, some of them were from Armenian museums, because, as I said, more than 200 carpets were still in private Shushi carpet museum in Shushi. So, of course, most probably, this heritage from different museums will be very quickly presented as Caucasian Albanian or Azerbaijanian.
Have any of the museums attempted to bring claims for the loss of their collections? Obviously, they haven't been successful if they have, but has the attempt been made?
This is another big problem of these museums because, as you know, Artsakh was politically unrecognized state. This makes some difficulties to make international case on this problem, on this question. No, there isn't any museum which tried to open any case on this question.
Yes, please come right up and ask first and then second.
Thank you for your presentation. It's very upsetting to be here and hearing all this stuff, but The one thing that comes into my mind listening the stuff that we have lost, we knew that the Karabakh situation was not resolved. There was a possibility always of a war. Why did we invest so much of these artifacts we left into Karabakh? And now my second question, Syunik is in danger now. There is a talk about Syunik. What are we doing about these precious items that are in museums in Syunik? Are we thinking maybe at least moving them into Yerevan, protecting them, or are we just indifferent about the whole thing? The second question I have, what happened to the Kansasar manuscripts? What happened? There was a talk before we handed Dikranagert to Azeris that we were taking all those potteries and everything to Yerevan. Is that true? Do we know what happened to all these artifacts in Dikranagert excavations?
Thank you very much. Thank you for important questions. Let me start from the last question. I can speak a lot. It can even be another meeting, discussion, lecture about the Armenian inscriptions, not only from Kansasar, but also from other churches. But let me shortly answer to it. You can follow to, there were established two important platforms after the 44-day war, one in Yerevan State University and called Monument Watch, and second in Cornell University in New York called Caucasus Heritage Watch. These two platforms are monitoring the cultural heritage situation in conflict zone in Nagorno-Karabakh after the 44-day war. As for this day, there wasn't any damage of inscription of Gandzasar monastery, but I will strongly suggest you to follow these two platforms to be in the future to know about the cultural heritage situation of Artsakh. As much as I know, from some museums, including the Tigranakert Museum collections, were evacuated by Artsakhian authorities while after the 44-day war. But I'm not sure are they in Yerevan or another place. But anyway, they say that the collections are in safe now. About the situation in Armenian museums, borderline museums. To be honest, for my lecture I prepared also to speak about it, but then I shortened it and decided not to speak, but about the Syunik. But the problem not only in Syunik regions museums, but in all borderline museums of Armenia. Generally, these museums were unprepared. Even now, in general, are not prepared to not only to crisis, but to not only to war, but to crisis overall. And even after the 44-day war, both in 2021, September 2022, when Azerbaijan attacked to Armenian border settlements. Fortunately, these museums were not damaged, but they are in a big risk because some of these museums are very close to the border, like Kapan Local Lore Museum, like Goris, some museums, Khanzoresk Village Museum, Sisyan, and so on. I can continue this list. And one of my aims to be here in United States, and as Mark Mamigonian mentioned, I'm in Cornell University as a visiting scholar. I'm researching the topic cultural heritage management during crisis situation. And we are trying with different professionals from different museums, different scientific communities to develop the preparation of Armenian museums to crisis situation, and we also established an initiative of protecting of cultural heritage, especially the museums of Armenian borderline settlements. Thank you. I hope I answered to all questions. If I missed something, please.
Nzhdeh, it's great to see you in Watertown. Thank you for your very important work and for ending with a picture of Ruben Vardanyan. And with this question, it's hard not to be political, I guess, but here we are in America, the West having been very toothless in its speaking since 2020. And what do we do? I mean, how do we assert influence? How do we affect any change? I'm sure I could come up with a few suggestions, but I don't know if how we make more noise or spread the word or do something to help stop this, not stop it, but slow it down or put pressure on the humanitarian rights in Artsakh.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Martin, for your question. If you ask me this question 1 year, 2 years ago, I would tell you, please speak about this problem as much as possible. Now I don't know what to say. To be honest, I don't know what to say. In all of the world, we see what is the situation. But if it is, let me say, it is a little emotional answer to your question. But if speak about some steps, I don't know. We are trying to make professionals net. We are trying to make some initiatives which will in future help to protect our heritage and especially museums in better way. Let us be in touch. I think that the support from here to that initiatives will be very supportive.
Yes, Dave.
Is the government of Armenia doing anything to help you or preserve Artsakh's heritage?
How to protect? What to protect? No, now these days there isn't any step which helping to protect this heritage. But as I said, I don't know what to do today to protect this heritage. I think the first thing is to speak as much as possible. But there isn't another steps which let me say me as a member of scientific community, which I see from the government side, which will help to protect the heritage. I mean of Artsakh, not of Armenian and Armenian borderline heritage.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, to state the obvious, when an entire country is effectively under threat of destruction, the museums and the cultural heritage are therefore also under threat of destruction. So short of evacuating the country, fill in the blanks. There is no absolute safety.
Yeah.
So following up on that last question from online, are the museums in Sunik and other border communities at least photographing their collections and putting copies of the catalogs outside of these communities? And is there a way that we can help from where we are here?
Yes, we speak only about Sunik, but let me say that the problem is not in Sunik region, but also especially after 2020, there is Tavush region museums and Gregorian region museums. They even started before the war, but especially after the war, as much as I know, they are they have a lot of trainings how to evacuate these museum collections, and parallel that digitalizing these collections, all materials. But in September, there was a conference in Getty Museum where I speak about Armenian borderline, the problems of Armenian borderline museums. When I was prepared this presentation, this topic, I see that even all regions of Armenia, I didn't know which regions I need to speak about, because almost all regions in Armenia are borderlines. For example, Vayozor region, we not used to tell borderline museum, but for example, Areni village, Areni cave, are from the border, from Azerbaijani border, more or less than 10 kilometers far. Is Vayozor region borderline or not? Today we speak, of course, I know why, but we speak mostly about Sunnic region. But the problem is not only in Sunnic region. The same problem we have in, for example, in Ararat region. There are some settlements, for example, Par Sevak House Museum. The museum, maybe not the museum itself, but the village is directly sown from the Armenian-Azerbaijani border. So I mean that is a very big problem for us, especially in last years. We are trying to be more prepared to this crisis. Of course, whatever we do, it is less, and we need every next day be more prepared, both evacuation and even not for evacuation, but crisis management.
I mean, it's amazing that you showed the pictures of the geological museum. I mean, if a geological museum is going to be destroyed, to the best of my knowledge, minerals are transnational, let's say. They have no particular ethnicity or cultural identity. But nevertheless, it was there for the destroying, and it was destroyed, which is depressing. I guess everybody knew that already. Sorry to point out the obvious. Question: are there any virtual presentations, recreations of any of these museums? For example, online virtual museum of X.
Thank you for the important question. There isn't any one platform which is presenting all these collections and cultural loss. But for example, the virtual exhibition mentioned by Jason Sohigian, The Treasures of Artsakh, can be one of that kind of platforms where we presented, of course, not only the Artsakhian museum's collections, but there also included some materials from Artsakhian museums. Till now, there isn't any specific any platform, any website or another virtual platform which will present all these collections. But there are some little initiatives where partially speak about these collections.
Have you yourself had to deal with any Azerbaijani propaganda pushback to dispute your work or invalidate your work or hinder your access to materials?
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Have you had to deal with Azerbaijani propaganda against you personally or to impede your work?
There is a very specific case happened with me some years ago. Let me start with this short historic background. In 2018, there was a conference in Florence, in Italy, scientific conference, nothing special, dedicated to archaeological archaeological heritage of Kurgans and South Caucasus. I presented a topic about the Kurgans of Nagorno-Karabakh, Artsakh. I spoke about them, about the survey, not about the excavations. My topic was confirmed, and a month ago, when the organizational committee of this conference published the program, I saw that there is some archaeologists from Azerbaijan. To be honest, I was happy because I think that it will be a good chance to meet and discuss some scientific topics. But one day after they published the program of conference, I received an email from organizational committee that, sorry, we have to reject your already confirmed application because other participants of this conference speak against your job, what you are doing.
Oh.
Of course, I can't do anything. I couldn't do anything because it was scientific committee in their decision, and unfortunately, I couldn't participate to this conference. After the 44-day war, following to Azerbaijani news, I know that they opened a case against me and some other archaeologists from Armenia that we made some excavations in Artsakh. Beside these two cases, to these two informations, I haven't met any other problems and any other cases.
Thank
So-
you. Thank you for answering all these difficult questions. Yes, Tanya.
I thank you for this wonderful talk. It's just some questions are coming up to me as I'm listening. One is, what are the similarities and differences between how Turkey has treated Armenian monuments and, ignore them, destroy them, but as far as I know, they haven't appropriated too many of them. I'm not sure. I may be wrong. I'm no historian. Mark knows that. And how is this different? And I'm asking in terms of like, how can at least the appropriation be reduced, or so that perhaps in later years there is more truth coming out? And another question as I'm listening is, when the remnants of Armenian culture are destroyed, whether it's in Turkey or in Azerbaijan or any other hostile location, I'm wondering, of course, some of it is out of animosity and wanting to destroy the existence of the other culture. I'm also wondering if there is a part of feeling guilty when they look at the Armenian remnants and not wanting to remember the mistakes or the atrocities, and therefore wanting to destroy evidence of that because of guilt feelings. It just occurred to, whether that has been researched. Thank you.
A profound psychological question.
Yes. Thank you for the questions. Difference between Azerbaijani and Turkey policy, generally there isn't big difference. They are doing the same, physically destroying the heritage. I will strongly suggest you to read one of the reports of Caucasus Heritage Watch, which dedicated to cultural heritage of Nzhdeh. In last years we speak less about it, but the Caucasus Heritage Watch monitoring shows that more than 90% of the churches, cemeteries were totally destroyed in Nakhchivan by Azerbaijani government. Generally, there isn't any big difference between Azerbaijani and Turkey policy. There is only one difference, that as much as I know, Turkey doesn't try to privatize this heritage and to present Armenian heritage as, I don't know, Ottoman or Turkish heritage, but as much as you know, Azerbaijan not only destroying this heritage, but also the one which is protected or kept, they are presenting, trying to present it as Azerbaijani or Caucasian Albanian heritage, which is totally fake theory.
Thank you. I think it then remains only for us to once again say thank you to Nzhdeh, please. Presentation.
Thank you very much.
It's not one with a happy ending. Hopefully it doesn't have an ending yet, but whether it will be a tragic ending or a less tragic ending, I suppose, I don't know on whom it depends, but hopefully we can move it in a more positive direction. We've done a lot of programs over the past few years on the destruction of cultural heritage in Artsakh, also in Nakhchivan. And I think back, this is the secret reason for choosing this book that was translated by George Bernuccian to raffle off, because I remember that 30 years ago or more, George Bernuccian was warning, as were others, about the falsification of Armenian historical texts. And the people who will falsify historical texts will falsify monuments, and people who will falsify monuments will destroy monuments. And unfortunately, we're seeing the whole spectrum of falsification and destruction here. Nevertheless, I thank you for your outstanding work. I thank you all for coming. I thank our co-sponsors tonight, the Society for Armenian Studies, the Mashdod's Chair in Armenian Studies at Harvard University, and the Armenian Museum of America, along with the Gulbenkian Foundation for supporting our contemporary issues programs. For those of you who are here, I invite you to join us for a reception. And for those of you online, thank you, as always, for spending time with us, and good night.